Hello everyone and welcome to QualityOldHomm. Today we are making another tier list, this time from tier 6 creatures in Heroes of Might and Magic 3 Horn of the Abyss expansion. And the tier list is based on the unit's fighting capabilities, but also the requirements and unit price affects things. And furthermore, these results are based on the How Good video series test I have been conducting, so the unit performance in those tests also is in the background on how well they will perform in this test. But without further ado, let's begin. First we have Black Knights from Necropolis, and in my opinion they are clearly one of the strongest, if not the strongest, unupgraded tier 6 unit in the game. And as a nice bonus they can curse enemies, so the enemies will cause minimum damage, and thus I think they deserve a place in A tier. And then we have the upgraded variant, Red Knights, a bit better stats wise than the Black Knights. Of course they have quite a bit better speed, which is really nice, and then they have the 20% death blow ability. So the possibility practically to deal double damage, which is really nice. Of course, the downside of that is that it's 80% chance that the death blow is not going to happen. So the unit is kind of RNG based. But I think in any case, despite its rather high price, it deserves a place in S tier. I think among the best, if not the best, tier 6 unit in the game. Then let's move to castle units. We have Cavaliers first. I mean, decent enough. Perhaps the speed could be a bit higher, but the jousting bonus is nice, so kind of a tactical unit. So if you kind of plan properly which units to engage, how to utilize that jousting bonus as much as possible, I think they are rather good. So I think they deserve a place in A tier, perhaps on a bit weaker side than the Black Knights here. And then we have champions. I think they are rather champions, so the speed is increased quite nicely, and that increased speed combined with that jousting bonus makes the unit rather nice. And actually I think that with utilizing that jousting bonus, the champions can, or they have a shot of taking on the Dread Knights, provided that they don't land the death blow on the first hit. But I think clearly among the stronger units of tier 6 units, upgraded tier 6 units, so a place in S tier. Then we have Unicorns. They are relatively cheap, and their stats are not that high, but then they have this ability to blind the opponent. And kind of a RNG unit, but at the same time, if you manage to land the blind, then you gain quite a bit of benefit in the battlefield. So I think the unit deserves a place in A tier. Perhaps on the lower end of A tier, but in A tier nonetheless. And War Unicorns, a bit higher stats, higher speed, which is always nice, and the same possibility for blinding. I think they deserve a place in S tier as well. I'm kind of wondering which the order here should be, but I think RNG is kind of unreliable. So, or at least I find it unreliable, so that's the reason I put these behind the champions in S tier and unicorns behind Cavaliers. Then let's move to Bounty Hunters, Factory unit. Factory has some really good units. Bounty Hunters and Gunslingers are not among them. Of course, they are nice against missile units, but otherwise I think they are too weak and they don't actually inflict too much damage for their place to be justified anywhere else than D tier. And I think the Gunslingers can go to D tier at the same go as well. Perhaps they should be rather on equal scale here, but yeah, let's put them on D tier there. And continuing with rather bad tier 6 units, we have Cyclops Kings. Not really good. Of course, their capability to demolish walls or shoot walls can be beneficial at some points, so I will rank them higher than these bounty hunters, but still in D tier. And Cyclops, I think they are actually even worse than these bounty hunters and gunslingers, so clearly on D tier. And speaking of the worst tier 6 units, we have Diamond Golems. If I had E and F tiers, I would put these guys into F tier. I guess that could be fail tier. I mean, the worst tier 6 unit in the game. Of course, 95% magic resistance or spell damage resistance is nice, but the unit is slow, the weekly growth is small from the buildings, and yeah, they don't perform that well in battle, except against magi or spellcasters. But yeah, clearly, in my opinion, the worst tier 6 unit in the game. Then let's move to Efreet Sultans. I think their performance in the How Good test actually surprised me, and in positive way. So they are surprisingly good unit, and actually because of their relatively cheap price, I think they deserve a place higher than the Dread Knights. And well, they have high speed, they can fly, they have that fire shield, they have immunity to fire magic, and furthermore, I think they are kind of a versatile and agile unit to use in the battlefield. Of course, if they go head to head against similar number of Dread Knights, they will lose, but otherwise I think they are surprisingly good, at least in my experience. Feel free to disagree in the comments if you disagree. Then we have Efreet. I think the upgrade from Efreet to Efreet Sultan is actually one of the biggest in tier 6 units. And whereas these are kind of agile units, these are kind of average tier 6 units. And I think thus they deserve place only in B tier. Then we have Enchanters. There are two ways to get these. First you have the hero, was it Draco or whatever it was, that can upgrade monks, zealots, magi, archmagi to enchanters, and then you have those dwellings from which you can get them. And well, it's rather rare that you get these guys in large numbers, but if you do get, I think that buff spells for all of your units is rather nice ability, but the unit is rather niche, so I think because of that only plays in B tier. Don't get me wrong, they are good supportive units, but the rarity and the numbers you are most likely getting in campaign will mean that they are not that much utilized. So that's the reason behind the B tier. Then we have magic elementals, immunity to magic, area attack or attacking all units around it, no retaliation. I mean, the speed could be a bit higher, perhaps the stats as well, but overall I think they very much deserve a place in S tier. Really solid tier 6 unit, in my opinion. And it has performed rather well in the How Goodest tests. Then we have Manticores, one of the weaker tier 6 units. I'm kind of wondering, should they be C- or D+, but since we don't have any C units at the moment here, I think I will give them C. I mean, the unit looks good, but it performs quite badly. Then we have Naga Queens, the most expensive tier 6 unit, no retaliation, and I think it has constant damage output. this might be a bit controversial, but I think the unit really does not perform that well. Let's put it in A tier. I was kind of considering putting it into B tier even, but let's give it weak A tier. The reason is that it's relatively slow, and it's kind of a big unit, and well, it cannot fly, so it kind of feels a clunky unit. So in the battlefield you need to maneuver it carefully so it doesn't get blocked by anything, and of course if you manage to hit enemies, that's really nice, but it at least takes the second turn practically to get to the enemy line. So yeah, despite it being the most expensive and having that no retaliation attack, I think I just don't like it. And I have to admit that I've liked it quite a bit more earlier, but based on the tests it really does not perform that well. So that's the reason for weak A tier. And some more controversy, most likely with this, Nagas I will put only in D tier, or perhaps on the weakest end of C tier. And the reasoning is that they are very slow, especially for tier 6 unit, but overall compared to all units they are really slow. And the same clunkiness applies them as to Naga Queens, and furthermore, well, they do have that non-retaliation attack as well, but I think the slow speed is what hits them the most. And the more I have played and tested this game, the more I begin to like speed and speedy units. So yeah, at most weak C tier for Nagas from me. Then we have Nyx Warriors. That's nice that they kind of blunt the enemy attack, so they are rather nice at hitting those highest tier units. Then again, their stats are not that great, and their speed is rather decent, but nothing to write home about, so I think they deserve place only in B tier, in my opinion. And then we have Nyxes, or Nyxai, however you want to pronounce that. Even slower, I think they deserve a place in C tier. So the bonus decreasing the enemy attack is not that big as with Warriors, and the stats are overall a bit weaker, so I think C tier is rather okay for them. Then we have Psychic Elemental, some resistance to mind spells, area attack, no retaliation, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I think no retaliation. But the speed and stats are somewhat lower than with Magic Elementals, and because of that I think only C tier. As there was quite a jump, well, I guess B tier, quite a jump from Efreeti to Efreet Sultans. I think there is quite a jump from Psychic Elementals to Magic Elementals as well, so B tier at most. Then we have Scorpicos. Practically the speed, high speed saves them, and flying of course. And then they have that ability to paralyze, RNG ability, so that can actually turn the tide in battle, but once again it's RNG ability. So yeah, I think B tier for these, perhaps A, weak A or strong B. Let's put them into strong B. And then we have Wyverns, one of the weakest tier 6 creatures. Once again, I think I will give them a place in C or D. I think we will give them a place in lower end of C tier. And finally, Wyvern Monarchs. I think the speed is rather great. And the poisoning ability can work wonders, but otherwise I think they are a bit worse than the Scorpicos because, well, they cannot paralyze the enemies and so on. Of course the poison is nice, but perhaps not quite as nice as the paralyze. So, here is my view of tier 6 units in Heroes of Might and Magic Horn of the Abyss expansion. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Have a great rest of the day. QualityOldHomm out.